easy, amazing, simple dinners that your family will love. That is what I'm here to share with you this week. Check out what we had for dinner. Hey friends, welcome back to This Homemade Life. If this is your first time on my channel, my name is Courtney and I do a lot of food related content. I cook a lot, I share grocery hauls, all kinds of stuff. So if you are looking for that kind of stuff, stick around, hit the subscribe button and join my little community here because I have got a ton of food content for you. Oh, I've got a helper today too. That is my youngest son, Jensen. So for this first recipe, I am just making some French onion dip that was incredible. We decided we were just having like some appetizers and finger foods over the weekend because we just felt snacky. I had been craving chilies, and what we get there is the triple dipper, which is just 3 different appetizers together. And so we just went all out with some finger foods. I made little sliders, I made boneless buffalo chicken, I made this French onion dip, I made some pigs in a blanket, and we just munched all weekend, and it was fun and fabulous. So I found a recipe for this online, and it is really pretty easy to make, but it does take a little while because you have to caramelize the onions. I think in total I cooked these onions for about 40 minutes, but I was able to do other things while they were cooking, so I didn't even really notice, if I'm being honest. I was making the rest of the food, so I mean it was fine. But they do take a while. They are a labor of love, but I will also tell you they are completely worth it. So I started off with a little bit of bacon grease in my skillet, and then I just added 3 onions that I thinly sliced into the pan and stirred them and cooked them for 40 minutes until they looked like that beautiful caramelized color. They are fabulous. They get sugary and sweet and rich. They're so good. I added in about 1 clove of minced garlic, and then I added in some cooking sherry. I think you can probably, if you don't have sherry, and normally I don't, it's just a fluke that I happen to have some, I would have just added in a little bit of beef broth, and that would have been fine too. But I had sherry, so I went ahead and added it in. I think you could probably do a little wine in its place as well. I don't see why not. It's just a small amount, so I don't think it's that big of a deal. But I did happen to have this. I had purchased it back at Christmas. I don't even remember why, but I had it, and I've been slowly like sneaking it into dishes to use it. Anyway, once it was done cooking, I moved everything over to my food processor. I think the recipe wanted you to like really pulverize this into like a goop, and I like texture. Like, I'm one of those people that really likes texture in my food. So I just kind of pulsed it a little bit because some of the onion strands were real stringy and long, and I wanted to kind of make those a little easier to eat, but I still wanted it to be onion and for you to know it was onion and to see the onion in it. So I just pulsed it for a minute or so. I think the recipe actually wanted you to do this with some bacon as well, and I wanted my bacon to be in the nice larger chunks that I had on hand already, so I didn't even bother adding the bacon in here. There's my bacon right there. It's just a couple of slices. I had this left over from when I made breakfast the day before, but you could always just use the like real bacon pieces that you can buy in the grocery store now. Then you're going to add in some sour cream and some mayonnaise, and that's like the creamy portion of this dip. A lovely combination, you know, kind of similar to what you would do with like ranch, you know. It's really, really good. And then it called for some white vinegar, and white vinegar is really, really strong. So sometimes in dishes like this where I know my family is not going to love that vinegar taste, I use rice wine vinegar. It still has a tang, but it's not quite as potent. Then I went ahead and added in some Worcestershire sauce, and I'm willing to bet money that I added in more than the recipe said because that's how I roll. I love that stuff. It's so good. Then I added in some parsley and some garlic powder, a little bit of salt right there. I didn't go too heavy on the salt because everything in here already has some salt in it or is kind of salty, but you want to add a little bit to kind of, I don't know, it helps enhance all the flavors. That's what salt's really, really good at. And then you just mix, and it's better if you could kind of let this set for a little while. The flavors come together a little more. I mean, you could serve immediately, but for me, I mixed it and I put it in the fridge for about an hour before we were ready to eat, and it was so good. So good. I actually reserved some of those onions on the side and put them on the little sliders as well. I didn't show how to make little sliders because I kind of thought they were pretty basic. I just cooked the meat and put it on a bun. I didn't do anything fancy at all. And I did not show the chicken because I've showed you guys how to make buffalo chicken on my channel before. I didn't do anything differently other than I just used frozen chicken nuggets from the grocery store and popped them in the air fryer. Oh, and I made some queso too because my husband just loves queso. But there is a completed plate. That is what we munched on over the weekend. Not healthy, but oh my gosh, so good. Do yourself a favor and treat yourself to just finger foods once in a while on the weekend. It's fun. Hey friends, welcome back to my kitchen. It is time to make dinner for my family. We're gonna make some chicken cacciatore. I have a recipe. I will link it down below, but I'm not gonna say I'm strictly following the recipe. I've already made a couple of changes, nothing major. So I've got a couple of chicken breasts here. It's just 2 chicken breasts that I cut in half because they were kind of on the big side. And then I seasoned them with garlic salt and an Italian blend seasoning by Kinder's that I really love, my family loves. The recipe I think just calls for salt and pepper, but yeah, this is just what I'm doing. Now that this is in the skillet, we want to go ahead and season this other side. And don't be afraid to be generous with your seasonings, especially when it comes to chicken. Chicken and pork can take a lot of seasoning. They're kind of bland by nature, and they're really good at taking on a lot of different kind of flavors. So don't be afraid to really put a lot of seasoning on there. When you're cooking chicken like this, that seasoning on the outside kind of helps you build a little bit of color as well. So we'll get like a little bit of a crust on there, which is fantastic. But we're just gonna let these cook all the way through. All right, my chicken's had a couple of minutes to cook. I'm gonna check it and see if it's, yeah, getting a little color. Just what we wanna see. I'm gonna flip these pieces over. That one's beautiful. It's okay, not too bad. All right, we'll let this side cook just like the first side till the chicken is completely done, and then we'll move on to kind of making a sauce in the pan. All right, I added like maybe half a cup, probably closer to a quarter cup of chicken broth, and then pop the lid on just to kind of make sure these cooked, because this one's pretty thick. Even though I did cut it in half, it's still pretty thick. So these are looking pretty good. I'm gonna go ahead and pull them out for right now, and we can kind of move on with the rest of the dish. I'm gonna go ahead and add in 1 pad of butter. I'm gonna throw in 1 onion that I chopped up. I'm gonna let these cook for a few minutes before I do anything else. And the one thing I'm gonna do differently is I'm gonna add a little bit of flour because I like a thick sauce. I do not like a thin liquidy sauce. It just doesn't work for me. Don't wanna eat it. So I am gonna add a little flour to this in a minute, so when our sauce is created, it'll be a little thicker. But for now, I'm just gonna let this onion cook. All right, the onions have been cooking for a little bit. They've cooked down quite a bit. This is not in the recipe, but I'm gonna toss in some capers just because I like capers, and I only had a tiny bit left in my fridge, so I just kind of felt it was one of those why not moments. Then I'm gonna add some garlic, and it's a pretty decent amount because I was just feeling that way today. Overall, this entire meal I'm making has a lot of garlic. I'm roasting some broccoli with a lot of garlic powder on it, and I'm about to pop some garlic knots in my oven, so I guess tonight's theme is garlic. All right, now I'm gonna add that flour I was talking about, just 1 to 2 tablespoons, not much. I'm not looking for like a gravy thick sauce, just one that's not quite so liquidy. All right, I'm gonna toss in a little cracked black pepper. I only have a little bit left, but I'll get what I can out. There we go. All right, and now we want to add our tomatoes in. I almost forgot them. They're sitting right here on my counter, but I almost forgot I was going to add them. Just some regular baby tomatoes, small tomatoes, grape tomatoes. So my tomatoes are both orange and red. We're just going to add in a couple of handfuls real quick. and they will burst and create a beautiful flavor. All right, now we're gonna add our liquids in. I've got about half a cup of chicken broth. I've got the juice and zest, because I just felt like it, of a lemon. And then I decided to toss in a little white wine because I think it'll taste fantastic. I'm gonna stir all of this together. And I'm trying to decide, in the picture for the recipe that I saw, they just put the chicken breasts back in like they are, but I'm really thinking about slicing them just because I think that's gonna be, I don't know, a little easier to eat. I don't know. I'm not making pasta with it. I thought about it, but I am making pasta later this week. And so I wanted to do something a little different, and I had one of those pastaroni boxes, so I'm just gonna serve this with some pastaroni and roasted broccoli and garlic knots. So I don't really know if slicing them up is the way to go. I don't know. I think I'm gonna do it just because I think it's gonna be easier to eat them that way. So for now, I'm gonna pop the lid on this pot so that the heat stays in and everything can simmer together. And then I'll add my chicken back in here in just a minute once I've sliced it. Hey friends, welcome back to my kitchen. It is Tuesday night and we are going to make Swedish meatball meatloaf. I am a fan of Swedish meatballs, but I am like on a quest to find this perfect recipe. When I was a kid, there was a TV dinner that was Swedish meatballs, and I just love the flavor of it. And I'm trying to find something that tastes similar to that. I know, like, I'm simple sometimes. I have not been to IKEA, so I can't compare to that. But we're gonna try this and see how it tastes. So I've got a pound of pork that I ground. If you saw my grocery haul, you know I didn't get what I ordered, but that's okay. I put it in my food processor and just, you know, let it go for a minute or so, and we've got ground pork. To it, I'm gonna add 1 pound of ground beef, and I've got the rest of our ingredients all set out and ready to go. See if we can break this up a little bit. I may just have to wait till I dive in with my hands. It looks that way. All right, so to this, we want to add a pretty good list of things. It's supposed to be half an onion, but my onions were on the small side, so I just went ahead and minced up 1 onion. I've got 2 eggs here that I scrambled. 1 cup of breadcrumbs. I did measure these out. Then we also need 1 cup of mashed potatoes. I just got some instant mashed potatoes, just the potato flakes. I just made some of those really quickly, and I think this is probably about 1 cup. I'm putting it in this dish to make sure, and it looks like it is, so we're good. This is a totally new recipe to me. I've never made it before, and I thought it was quite interesting with mashed potatoes. Something new. All right, and then we're gonna add our spice blend. So we've got some salt, some pepper, and some allspice, and then I added a little garlic powder just because I wanted to. I like garlic in a lot of things, and I thought I would like it in here too. So I went ahead and added just a little bit in there. We're gonna add all those spices in, and just like I would with regular meatloaf, gloved up, we're gonna dig right in with our hands and incorporate everything. I don't want to overmix this, but I definitely want to make sure both types of meat are mixed together and everything is mixed really well and really evenly. I can smell the allspice and the onions. It just smells so good. I hope this tastes like I want it to. All right, so anytime I make meatloaf, I don't have a meatloaf pan. I've never had a meatloaf pan. I used to just bake this in like a, I don't know, like a loaf pan. That's what I always baked meatloaf in until, I don't know, a few years ago. I saw Alton Brown and he made it on a cookie sheet so that the grease would drain away more easily and it wasn't just kind of frying in its own grease. And I really like that method. So I kind of do something similar. I have a glass casserole dish over here. And I'm just going to kind of shape this, but not let it touch the walls if I can. This is a little bigger than I would normally make a meatloaf because really there's only 3 people in my house that are going to eat it. My younger 2 children do not really care for ground beef, which is okay. Currently, they're sick and they're not eating much anyway, so No big deal. I thought we were past like the cold weather colds, but my kids did decide to have one more. So they've got a little cold with a lovely cough, and hopefully they kick that real soon. That's also why it's Tuesday and we are not at martial arts. I didn't want to take them if they're sick. So hopefully we'll be able to go Thursday. All right, that is shaped pretty well. I've got gaps on the side. Usually I do it in a bigger pan. This is a new glass dish that I got not too long ago, and I thought I would give it a shot. Might be a little smaller than I want for this, but that's okay. I've got a 350-degree oven that I preheated, and this says it bakes for 1 hour and 15 minutes to 1 hour and 20 minutes, which seems like a really long time. Maybe that's just me. I'm gonna keep an eye on it, but while it's baking, like towards the end of the bake time, we're gonna throw together the gravy sauce that goes on the top, because unlike a traditional meatloaf, there's no glaze we're gonna put on there. We just serve it with the gravy on top. So we'll get that together here in a minute, but I'm gonna get this baking. All right, my meatloaf is getting close to being done, so we need to create the sauce for it. So I'm gonna start off by melting 2 tablespoons of butter in my pan. Okay, to the butter, we wanna add in 2 tablespoons of flour, and we'll whisk. Let me turn that heat down a little. Okay, we're gonna add in a little salt and pepper. I'm out of peppercorns. I thought I had some, but I guess I don't. I even just cleaned out my pantry and I couldn't find any, so I guess I'm out. We're just gonna use regular pepper that I keep on my table. I'm going a little heavy with it because that's just how we like things. We're also gonna add a little bit of salt. And then we need to add in 2 cups of beef broth, but I use this beef base and water, and I find it's easier if I add this straight to the hot pot and then add the water, because the heat really does kind of help break this up a little bit. Otherwise it's like real thick. All right, stir this around for just a second, and you see it just kind of melts, which makes it so much easier to mix in. If you try to mix it with the water, it's a lot harder to get it to mix in. So now I'm gonna add in my 2 cups of water. So it's the equivalent of 2 cups of beef broth. You wanna stir, make sure there's no lumps and no clumps. Okay, next we want to add in a little nutmeg. Then we're going to add in a little bit of soy sauce. And a little bit of Worcestershire sauce. And then it calls for ½ a cup of sour cream. All right. There we go. And I'm gonna whisk this in. And then we're just gonna let this come up to a simmer so that it thickens from our roux that we added in there. And then we're gonna add in, it calls for 1/3 cup of fresh parsley, which I just don't have on hand, but I do have dried parsley. I'll go ahead and add some of that in. I'm probably gonna do about close to a tablespoon. There we go. Whisk it together. And we just let this heat up and thicken, and this is done. All right, I followed the recipe, but I'm really not happy with the consistency of this. It's very liquidy and not like a gravy like what it's supposed to be. So I mixed together some cornstarch and some water, and I'm mixing that in just to thicken it up so that it's more like a gravy. That's better. It's already thickening because it was boiling. That's more like what I'm looking for, something gravy-ish, sauce-ish. That was just liquidy. So I'm gonna link the recipe down below how it is. And if you're okay with that, then that's fine. I'm kind of particular. I just like the sauces a little thicker. That's me. So I did add in a quick cornstarch slurry. It was like a tablespoon of cornstarch and a tablespoon of water. So today we are in the kitchen kicking this off. It's actually grocery day at my house, and I've been kind of busy and we've got some stuff to do this evening, but we're gonna make some, I need to think of a name for it. It's like potatoes gratin, I think it is. That's what I'm kind of taking the recipe for and just changing it up a little bit. I'm gonna make some Gordon's battered fish planks tonight, which, I mean, they're in the freezer section. So I thought I would share this recipe for the side dish, which is the potatoes, with you guys. I'm excited to make this. I've seen other people make similar dishes and I kind of thought that would be fun. So I'm putting my own twist on it. So here we go. All right, friends, here we are back at the stove top. We're gonna make these potatoes gratin. I don't know what to call them. I like deep down inside want to call them like cracked potatoes gratin because I am doing a bacon ranch kind of situation. So I've got a couple of tablespoons of bacon grease in my pan. The original recipe called for butter, but I chose to use this because I kind of thought it might be just a little more fun because I am putting bacon in this anyway. So starting off with bacon grease is only going to make it a little bit better. If you don't have bacon grease, don't worry. Just use butter, use oil. It'll all be fine. I did add a little bit of garlic, about 1 clove of minced garlic, the equivalent of 1 clove. I'm gonna give that just a minute to heat up before we add liquids in here. And I'm just gonna add a little bit of milk. All right, I'm gonna whisk, whisk, whisk to try to help get rid of any lumps and clumps that we have in there. And we're gonna give this just a minute to start to heat up before we do anything else. Basically, we're kind of making a gravy here, and then we're gonna add some delicious goodies to it, like cheese. Yum. So we'll just go ahead and use some of that. There we go. And we will whisk that in. Then I want to add a little bit of garlic salt just for extra flavor. All right, I like to just mix mine periodically as it starts to heat up just to make sure that no lumps and clumps are forming. Sometimes on the bottom of the pan, the flour will settle a little bit and start forming clumps if you don't keep it moving around. Okay, this is starting to thicken up really, really nicely. So I'm gonna keep a real close eye on it. In fact, I'm gonna go ahead and turn the heat off. And we're gonna add some more ingredients. We wanna add in some Parmesan. You can do fresh. I was gonna grate some fresh in, but I have this stuff. This is nice for certain applications. It really, really is because it's convenient and it's quick. I'm gonna add in about 1/3 of a cup of this. Mix that in. So we want to add in some cheddar cheese. I'm going to take a little help from the store and just use some pre-shredded. I know it doesn't melt quite as well, but it'll be fine. Whoops, I'm gonna throw it all over the stove and add it in my pot all at the same time because I've got skills. I did just a little bit over half this bag, so probably about 1.5 cups. This is a 2-cup bag. So probably about 1.5 cups or close to it. I'm gonna give that a good stir and let that cheddar cheese kind of melt into our sauce. Just needs a minute. Even with the heat off, it's still hot enough to melt it and it'll be fine. The last thing I'm gonna stir in is some bacon. You can cook some bacon and crumble it fresh. I have this stuff in my fridge because it's really convenient to have. And I'm just gonna toss in a couple of handfuls. right, I've got my casserole dish all ready to go. I've sprayed it with nonstick spray, and here are my potatoes. I have a rotary grater. You know, you crank the handle and it grates the cheese. It has different blades, just like a box grater, and one of them is the slices. So you can slice them by hand, you can slice them on your grater. Even a box grater has this particular setting. You could use a mandolin, whatever works for you. You could use frozen potatoes, you could use julienne potatoes. So really just whatever will work at the end of the day. I'm using these, and we're gonna put half of them down. So we're gonna go ahead and take about half of this sauce. I should get a better spoon. Here we go. And then just drizzle half the sauce on here. And this has our bacon, our Parmesan, our cheddar, our ranch. It's got so much flavor. It smells fantastic. All right, then we just want to take a little heavy cream, or you could use half and half, and drizzle it on here just to make sure that there is plenty of liquid for these potatoes. I'm going to drizzle about half a cup on there, and then we'll just start the layers all over again and put the rest of our potatoes. This is about 2 pounds of potatoes. I used 3 decently sized potatoes. Like before, I'm gonna add a little more of this just to make sure there's plenty of liquid in here. And you could top this with more cheese if you want to. I'm good with it the way it is. I am gonna cover it in foil, and then I'm gonna bake this. I will link the original recipe down below so you can see what I started with and what I changed it into. You can make it for yourself or alter it in any way you want to. I'll show you what it looks like when it's done.